Professor Wang Zhengxu and dear participants, uh, very good afternoon and welcome to NICE webinar on China's political system, general features and responding to a gigantic crisis. Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement is an independent, apolitical and non-partisan think tank which believes in freedom, democracy and world free from conflict. We envision a world where sources of insecurity are identified and understood, conflict are prevented or resolved, and peace is advocated. China Studies is one of our major research centers. China Studies as a whole brings into perspective the rising powers mounting economic, military, and diplomatic clout that certainly has the aptitude to either overturn or sustain the current contemporary world order. The China Center broadly examines China's international strategic thinking and conduct, foreign and security policies, and the impact of domestic politics and economy on China's foreign relations. It further addresses China's emergence in the face of the world in flux, domestic politics, economic, society, culture, People's Liberation Army, Tibet Autonomous Region, and many important, and most importantly, her engagement with each of South Asian countries. To talk on this very important topic for today, we have a distinguished scholar from China. Professor Wang Zhengxu is Distinguished Professor at the Department of Politics at Fudan University. Previously, he served as Acting Director and Senior Research Fellow at the China Policy Institute, University of Nottingham, and National University of Singapore. Professor Wang received his PhD in Political Science from University of Michigan in 2005. His current research projects include the domestic values of Chinese citizens, international institutional changes and political reforms in China's political system, and the politics of governance in China. He has published widely on socioeconomic modernization, value change, democratization, governance challenges, and leadership and elite politics in China and East Asia. His publications have appeared in Governance, International Review of Sociology, Political Research Quarterly, Japanese Journal of Political Science, Contemporary Politics, Asian Journal of Public Opinion Research, the China Quarterly, the China Journal, Journal of Contemporary China, and many others. He's also a frequent contributor of opinion commentaries and analysis on political issues in China in the Chinese media. May I request Professor Wang to make his remark for around 40 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for discussion. We request our participants to drop their questions in the Zoom chat box or comment below the Facebook Live. Professor Wang, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. J.S. Wang. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in NICE for this event. Let me turn on my PowerPoint.
Okay, sorry, I have to make you host. Just a second. I'll make you the host. Yes, now you can share.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let me find my PowerPoint. Yeah, there we go. All right. Okay, I will use this PowerPoint to go through my comments, and then we will stop for questions. So the topic is, I would like to discuss how to understand China's political system, and then I will use this COVID-19 as an example to show how the Chinese political system responds to a major crisis. I call it a gigantic crisis, and I will give some definition of what a gigantic crisis would be like. So to start with, when we try to understand China's political system, it's very common that many people in the West and people who receive education from Western derived literature to think that China is challenge to the Western model of market economy plus political democracy. They call this the Mark-Dam paradigm. This so-called challenge has been there for a while. Many people always say China is China is against this norm of market economy and democracy. But I think if there, to think of China as a challenge is only because this challenge is real only because one, that the so-called democracy is defined by the multi-party electoral democracy type. We have the assumption that a democracy is multi-party election. That's a very fundamental assumption. So because China doesn't have multi-party election, so China is a challenge to democracy. So this China being a democracy only because democracy is so defined. Okay. And second, democracy, China is a challenge to democracy because we have taken democracy as the only one criteria to measure any political system. We can only think of a political system from the perspective of democracy versus non-democracy. Actually, so what I'm going to say is actually there are many other ways to think about a political system, to measure a political system. And three, this is less relevant, but because it's in the Mark-Dam paradigm, China is a challenge to so-called market economy only because we believe, people in the West believe that market economy has to be an economy without state ownership, because China has a lot of state firms. So people believe China is not a market economy. So I am not going to talk about market economy today. Mostly I will, in the first part of my talk, I will talk about how to understand China's political system without necessarily sticking to this Western assumption of democracy. So I give a illustration. When you think of China and the United States, we often say China is not a democracy, United States is a democracy. But actually, how these two countries differ are not limited to the electoral system. That there is not because these two countries have two different so-called region types. That one has multi-party election, a two-party, bi-party election. The other has one party. They do not differ just in other political institutions, that their Supreme Court work differently, their parliaments work differently in these two countries, or they also don't differ in their cultures, that they have two different, their cultures are different, or they don't differ just in their belief systems, that Chinese society's beliefs are different. They are shared beliefs, they are common beliefs, but they are also different beliefs. So the differences between the US and China politically are not just the party system, are not just that one has one party, the other has two parties. They're very multifaceted differences. So how do we make sense of a political system? Recently, I think for the last 1 or 2 years, I developed this kind of framework of understanding political institutions in the broader sense. That I think to understand a political system, we have to separate the ideational institutions from the operational institutions. And I see the elections, whether you have one party or two parties, I see this as the operational parts, the mechanics that organizes political activities and actions. While I think the more fundamental defining institutions are ideational, are really what do people in this country, in this political community, what do they believe in is the right political order, right way of utilizing power, or are the right way to structure the relation between people and the government. And these are ideational. They can be translated, they can be operationalized in different ways, different mechanics. So I call this ideational part. One is the legitimization, the general norms and values and beliefs, or you can call this ideology of a political community. And in some sense, you can call this the constitutional rules. Or in China, in the traditional China, it's really the Confucianism. For more concrete rule presentations, all these, I call them just the optional institutions that include electoral institutions, representation institutions, deliberation, decision-making institutions, policy implementation institutions. And this is more narrowly called the state or the government or the governance system. And then below this, there are, I think there are more technical ones. There are more techniques, such as what ways, what methods you use to monitor financial transaction, how do you count people, how do you count votes. These are, I call it techniques. So this, I think this is very important for my talk is I want to show to understand a political system, it's very important to go to the ideational part, that China and the United States, China and Nepal, difference or the similarities between them. The more important ones are ideational, and the operational ones are less important. That's my main argument. So in terms of ideational, yeah, we can think of this general idea of liberal democracy. In terms of liberal democracy, the ideational part is the general belief that democracy is the idea or the ideal of government, or democracy is a fundamental value of government, of politics. And the general rules, and this is also ideational rules, that democracy is about civil rights and liberties, it's about accountability, it's about representation. These are just values. These are principles. These are rules. It's about clean government, it's about limited government, it's about rule of law. So these rules or these ideas in democracy, they're no problem. No one disputes these rules, no one disputes these values. It's in this, they are operationalized in very specific terms, such as to ensure civil rights and civil liberty, you want to have independence court. You want to have independent judicial process. And to ensure representation, you want to have a parliament. That kind of operationalization, okay? So these values of democracy they are fine. No one disputes them. But we often forget that in liberal democracy ideas, there are something that are missing. Yeah? There are many values that democracy or liberal democracy doesn't emphasize. So ideationally, what liberal democracy is not. We can see this list. liberal democracy is not about state capacity. It doesn't emphasize that you want a state that's capable, that's competent. It's not about unity of political community. It's more about rights and autonomy of individuals. It's about individual groups' rights. It's less about unity of the whole community. It's not about socio-economic development. Liberal democracy is about people's liberty and rights, but it's not about socio-economic welfare. And when you talk about socio-economic welfare or development, it's socialism, it's other kind of ideas. And it is not about state responsibility. Yeah, liberal democracy emphasize individual rights and also individual responsibilities. You always want to have small government, limited government, so it doesn't emphasize state responsibility. And it is not about moral strength or integrity of government officials, because government officials are just a normal citizen. They are normal citizens taking a job in the government. They are not subject to additional or a higher level of moral requirements. This is very different from Asian conception of politics. In Confucian tradition, government officials must be people of virtue, people of higher level of moral strength. And this is not in liberal democracy, okay? So liberal democracy is not about meritocracy. It believes in popular support, popular mandate. If you can gain votes, you become a government official. Where in Asian society, government officials need to prove their capacity, competence by performance, through exams and so on. And liberal democracy is not about meritocracy. I mean, in Western countries, there are meritocratic elements. Government does select officials and promote officials according to merit, but that's not in the idea of liberal democracy. That's the idea from other political traditions. And liberal democracy is not about organized hierarchy. Liberal democracy is against any kind of hierarchy, while in other political tradition, people believe certain kind of order, certain kind of hierarchy are necessary and are important and just. We have a colleague, Daniel Bell. He recently published a book with Pei Wang. It's called The Just Hierarchy. And this is about this idea in politics, maybe certain kind of hierarchy are important, are necessary. Okay, and then liberal democracy is not about leadership party. I'm going to skip this. And it's not about state society synergy. Liberal democracy always see state and society as separate, and the state is responsible, accountable to the society. The society always hold the government as kind of necessary evil, and it's not about the government and the society should come together to deliver governance or to deliver social economic change. So I think no one has quite written about this seriously, systematically. What I'm doing here is to show liberal democracy is a great thing, but it is not everything. There are many important values that liberal democracy doesn't emphasize. Let me bring in the China, the ideational parts of the Chinese political system. And how do we know the Chinese political system or Chinese political community emphasize these values? In the Western media, you see all the reports of what the government does, what things the government does. A foreign reporter and many scholars, they are unable to read really the fundamental values or the foundational values of Chinese politics. And so this, you have to do this by studying Chinese politics, by analyzing Chinese political discourses and analyzing Chinese policymaking process and results. I'll try to be very brief. One, the Chinese politics emphasize a range of, I call this socialist ideas or socialist ideals. And they are about unity of the community. They are about common welfare. They're about strong state. You need a strong state to deliver, to generate outputs. And it has a very heavy focus on the state having, the state has to deliver. The state has strong and wide range of responsibilities, and it has a very meritocratic vanguard party. Yeah, the socialist tradition has this vanguard party tradition. I put this together with the meritocratic party state system, tradition. And then the Chinese politics also have strong democracy ideas. It emphasizes people's sovereignty nominally. This is a people's republic. People is the sovereignty, and it's the people's Congress where the country's sovereignty lies. And this Chinese tradition of Minben, of people rootedness. This is the Confucian idea of Minben. It's a bit difficult to translate, but it basically these ideas are from the Confucian tradition that treats people as the roots of the country, and then government should serve the interests of the people, and government is there to make people, to bring a better life to people. And it has, I put meritocracy idea here on the democracy because in Chinese tradition of meritocracy, a commoner, people of very low background, can rise to leadership or prestigious positions through merit, through hard work, through contribution to the public, to common good. And then, so the current government, for example, the current government formulates its ideology as this is the government of the people, from the people, in the people, and for the people. Okay. The difference here is there are no direct election of national leaders. So if you say that denies China's political system as a democracy, you have to, I think you have to think twice. You have to think again. And there are ideas of republic. I will be very brief here. Basically, the idea is we are a republic. We are a kind of all of us. So we have it's an inclusive community, and it's about ethnical, intercommunal harmony and integration and unity, and so on. So to summarize, I think Chinese political system, the ideational part includes something very different from a liberal democracy, is that it emphasizes state capacity and state responsibility. It emphasizes unity of the political community. It emphasizes socio-economic development and socio-economic rights of people. And it emphasizes the party being a leadership party, being a lead party in the past. It was a revolutionary party. By the way, I'm very happy we are talking about this in Nepal, because in Nepal you have the Communist Party, that they have some shared communist revolutionary ideology. And it is about state-society synergy. And these 5 points also later on, today I will show in terms of responding to a crisis, all these aspects will be at work. So those are the ideational elements of Chinese political system, and operationally, let's say the most important, I say the operational institution is the party, is the Chinese Communist Party. Um, I'm not sure how much, how much time we want to spend on this point, but and also the party is quite, it's a very, I hear a lot of noises. Someone, maybe someone should turn off his or her mic. Yeah, someone is giving a lot of noises. Anyway, okay, I'll continue. The party, I can be very brief, and I can also spend 2 days talking about the party, because this is a very large party. It is the leading political party of the most populated country in the world, and it has so many functions, so many elements. So this one slide, of course, cannot do justice, but let's try. So it's a party now with more than 90 million members. 90 million may be big. I think Nepal has 30 million population, but China has 1.4 billion people. So 90 million in China is not big. It's less than 10%. And then it has something called the center. It's very hard to explain this concept of the center. One, it has the party has a 5-year Congress that will elect a central committee, and this central committee is about 370 members, and then this central committee more or less will be the leadership organization for the 5 years. And then the Central Committee will select a Politburo, which has 25 seats, and then a standing committee for this Politburo. And then the party has a number of party departments. And then in every territorial jurisdiction, in every province, every municipality, every county or township, there is one organization of the party, like at the center. You have a party committee, you have a party congress at the province, you have a party committee elected for that province, and you have many party departments to organize party work and governance for that province. So on for for cities, for counties, for township is the same. And in organizations, you also have party organizations in government ministries, in universities, in hospitals, in local governmental bureaus, and so on. So the party is embedded in the government structure, and it's easier to think the government and the formal and the party are combined, are always integrated. Besides the party, there's a central committee of the party. Besides the party, I call this China. I call China a party-led constitutionalism model, that the National People's Congress is the legislature, is the lawmaking body, and you have the State Council, which is the cabinet, and the People's Congress and the cabinet are under the leadership of the party, and then territorially, this is a provincial system. So it is a unitary system instead of a federalist system, meaning provincial governments, authority is delegated from the central state. So this is very unlike the United States or the Indian system. I don't know in how, but between China and India, one is a unitary state, the other is a federalist state. So let's be quite simple here. I mean, these charts, they are helpful, but if we don't have time to explain them, that's okay. We can skip them. Basically, meaning the Chinese political system. And again, here I am talking about the operational part. I have already covered the ideational parts of the political system, but in terms of how the system operates, this is a chart that can be helpful. Thinking of the party as the overall leadership organization, and then you have the Congress, and that's the party's own structure. And you have the state council, basically this is the cabinet, and the cabinet of the central government, and you have the government of each provinces and each cities, each counties, and so on. Because I imagine there are young students in the audience, I kind of make this give some tourist information too. That when if you travel to Beijing, and also on TV or in newspaper, you see these images quite often. This is the Tiananmen, and that's the People's Hall. And in report in China, people often use this image, but there's no government here. Chinese government is not behind this building or anything. This is closer to the Chinese state. That's the where the National People's Congress is. But actually, the more important political organization or agency is here. It's a bit west of the Tiananmen Square. This is called the Zhongnanhai. This gate is called the Xinhuamen, the new China gate. And then that's where the party center and the state council is, or are, where the party center and the state council are. They are housed inside this compound. So that's Tiananmen, and that's where you saw the new China gate. And inside this called the Zhongnan. Here, this is the Southern Sea, the Nanhai. And yeah, that's the Nanhai and Zhonghai. Basically, this part is where the party center, Nanhai is where the party center is. And then the Zhonghai is where the state council. So the premier's office is somewhere here. And the parties, and the president and the general party secretary, his office is somewhere here. Of course, from this map, no one knows which room, which building he is. At least I don't. No one. I mean, there is chance you can visit. You can make a visit inside this compound, but it requires a lot of clearance. So probably I didn't. I never try. I never tried to make a trip inside this, but theoretically I can. Anyway. And here you see this polka dot, and it's here. That's the Northern Sea Park, and so this is Zhonghai, Central Sea and Southern Sea, and here's Northern Sea, and this is a public park, and that's the Forbidden City. So when you visit Beijing after Forbidden City, it's one bus ride, and you can come into this park. This very old park. The tower, I think, is from the 12th or 11th century. So a bit of tourism, a bit of tourist information. The other element or the other dimension of the operational component of the Chinese political system is this. Call it the line and block dual governance design, and it's very common knowledge in China, but it was Lieberthal. Some of you know this author Lieberthal. He formalized this in his book called the Tiao and Kuai, the line and block design, meaning the whole system is structured to integrate vertical control and a territorial, a vertical or functional control and territorial control, meaning, for example, any bureau, any agency at anywhere of the system is subject to two direction of authority and coordination. So the bureau, the provincial government's Bureau of Environment, for example, it reports to both the provincial government, provincial governor and provincial party secretary, and the national government's Ministry of Environment. So for any agency in anywhere in the system, you are subject to two directions of authority and coordination. So you report to both the central government's functional department and your provincial, your regional government's overall leadership. There are some functional areas that are vertical that the local government doesn't have any influence. So for example, food safety regulation is a centrally directed line of control. Same with let's say monetary policy and so on. But most of the governmental functions, education, environment, development, water resources, everything more or less is subject to both upper level control and the same levels government control. And this is also very important in my presentation. So in terms of territorial, you think of China more than 36 provincial units. So there are 23 provinces, 5 autonomous regions, 4 municipalities, and then 2 special administrative regions. And then within each provincial unit, you have prefecture and municipal level government. And then below that, you have county level government, you have township, street level government. And then the primary units are the village in the countryside and residential areas in the cities. So this way you can think of China territorially or regionally are organized into 5 or 4 layers of regions, from the village to township to county and to city and province, and then nationwide. So I want you to think of China as both as having multi lines of authority from the central government to the very low level, and then also as areas, territories, territorial units around the country. So think of the political system operationally. Think of this dual governance design. So here, these are the Chinese blocks or regions from provinces to prefecture, municipalities, and to counties. And what do they do? Local governments, provincial governments, city governments, county governments, what do? They maintain local affairs, they maintain local development within, but they are subject to the upper level directions, control, and context. So each regional blocks, a county, a city, a province, they have their self-contained capacity. They have the capacity to run local affairs, to manage local crises. So we will very soon get to this point of crisis management. But you also want to notice that the local units, they vary. in terms of their capacities, in terms of local constraints, in terms of challenges, they vary. So one province may deal with one issue much better than another province. One province may find a very effective way, I call this innovation of certain issues, and this normally get to transmitted to other provinces. The other provinces can learn, can adopt good practice from other provinces. And also, very importantly, I say the local government is self-contained, has self-contained capacity. But if they fail, if they are unable to meet certain challenges, they always have the opportunity to fall back on the upper level government. Here, the idea I said this earlier is the government, the upper level government also actually has the responsibility. Yeah, I talk a lot about state responsibility. The upper level government has the responsibility to come in to help, to ensure every local region under its jurisdiction are fine. If the lower level units run into trouble, the upper level government has the responsibility to come in and help. Yeah, this is a very important point, and you will see. Okay, let me see my time. And already 40 minutes, almost 35 minutes. Okay, let me finish this very quickly. In terms of responding to crisis, one crisis always emerges locally. It always happen at one place or a few places around the country. And then it's the local government that is the first responsibility to deal with the crisis. And if it depends on how severe the crisis is and how much capacity the local government has, it may fail. It may succeed, it may fail. If it fails, the upper level government will come into, if the crisis threatens to escalate, the upper level government will come into play. Okay. And the upper level government now can, because it's at the upper level, it can mobilize more resources and it can commit more resources. So, and in my title, I used the term gigantic. In the China context, I defined gigantic to mean happenings that require the national government to directly manage the happening. Either it's an event. The 2008 Olympics was a gigantic event that the central government directly managed it. Either it's a big project, either it's disaster relief. 1998 there was a major flood, and 2008 there was a major earthquake. This disaster relief become a gigantic event that the central government directly come into play. And really what is considered gigantic partly depends on the politics ideational sources. And here we can link back to what I said earlier. What does the Chinese political community valued or believe in? That's the Beijing Olympics 2008. And then when a crisis such as disaster relief, when a crisis becomes gigantic, the central government come in to directly lead. And normally you have a state or national leader state on site throughout the process. And the central government can take forceful measures, such as mobilizing the armed forces, quickly construct hospitals, quickly construct camps for to host people, and then it can mobilize other provinces to come in to commit resources. you can mobilize different sectors in terms of food supplies, equipment manufacturers, and so on. And then social forces will join, sometimes mobilized by the state, but sometimes voluntarily, but they will play under the state or party leadership. So a few photos. This was the 1998 Fudan defense. That's the president or party secretary. So he was on site several times, and that was the premier, and large number of troops were mobilized and civilians mobilized. And then that was the Wenchuan earthquake. So that was the premier. He went to the site right away when the news of the earthquake broke out, and that's the president or party secretary. Several days later, he went to the site and replaced, take over from, not take over, just to succeed the premier. And so maybe this was my second to the last slides. When this, there were of course a lot of reports already about this coronavirus to 2019. I hope by the way so far you have already understand how I would characterize the government responses to this crisis. So in early December there were cases, but it was not very. The local government wasn't sure. The local medical system wasn't very sure, and by mid-January, now it is very clear this is a very serious epidemic, and the central party leadership, the central state, determined this needs of a large national-led response and a rapid, a quick, decisive response. So very soon it was a number of very forceful measures were announced and implemented. Closing of the city of 20, I missed the 3 zeros, 20 million, this 20 million. And then the government announced large amount of financial resources to combat the epidemic, and local leadership was replaced. And actually there was a vice premier sitting on site from that time on. And then every other province, it was the Chinese New Year time. I went to my hometown and I experienced this. So every province, more or less every neighborhood is locked down. And people, of course, people support it. People willingly stay home and so on. But there are other, I don't have time today. There are interagency, inter-province efforts, in terms of medical, engineering, logistic capacities, everything was mobilized. And then in terms of supplies, in terms of manufacturing capacity, everything was mobilized. And this, what I'm saying is because it was a national government response, and the national government has the capacity and the power to mobilize this coordinated effort to crack down the epidemic. I think just a few more slides. So some of these are examples how the government can, or what the government did in terms of building hospitals, in terms of medical teams across the country. There were by early February, there were 190 medical teams coming into Hubei province, and more than 20,000. Some of my friends, some of my colleagues went. They were in the medical system, and I'll just I think we can skip this details information. The point is it requires a multi-section, multi-industry coordination and mobilization. So these are manufacturing, medical equipment, supplies, and life supplies. Manufacturing, deliver them, and distribute them. So let me quickly conclude. I think my beginning point, and I think a very important point people should note is that when we compare political systems, we have to separate ideational from operational components. And I think people always say, yeah, because we're in Nepal, people always say between China and India, India is always hard to understand and China is often misunderstood. One way people misunderstand China is that the ideational parts of the Chinese political system are often overlooked. People ignore. People do not take that seriously. And then the operational parts you have in China, the political system. The party is a very rigorous party. So nationally, it has a very vigorous system, and local system also vigorous. So this combination of national and local mechanics can do well when you have a big crisis. Okay, responding to a gigantic crisis, the upper level or the national efforts can ensure mobilization and commitment from across the country. This way you can generate the result. I will stop here. I'm sorry for a bit of overrunning. Now I'm happy to have a discussion.
Thank you, Professor Wang. It was very comprehensive and we hardly get to know more about China because like you said that people have very less information about China. So it was very comprehensive presentation and we learned a lot. Let me go quickly to the questions because they are flooded with questions. First, maybe we'll come with 3 sets of questions. The first is, how is dissent normally addressed within the party? How is dissent addressed in the party? That is first. Second, China is known for its meritocracy. Can you please elaborate how leaders are being selected at grassroots level to the highest? So how from lower level to higher level the leaders are selected. And third is, what is the difference between Chinese communism and Russian communism?
Okay, 3 questions. Dissent, the party has this system, this is operational part, is the party has this so-called democratic centralism, meaning dissents within the party can be spoken, can be expressed, and during internal deliberation, any opinions, positions can be expressed. Then the party, either whether in the cell, whether in the party committee, then the party deliberation will take a decision. It may be based on consensus. It may be based on just, okay, after certain deliberation, the party take a majority view, or the party leaders might take a minority view. If the party leader believe, okay, every opinion is expressed, and I think actually this position might be better even though it is a minority view. And I think a lot of time the party leader or the party leaders as a collective, they can make a decision that may defy majority view. But the point is, there must be a deliberation process. There must be a stage where every party member, if you have disagreements, you can express. But once the party deliberation collectively take a decision, then this decision become binding. That's the idea of democratic centralism. Then lower level to higher level, I think the current president's example is very telling. Everyone now at a very high level of government, they start from very basic level in the government. And the party's organizational department manage party officials' dossiers. The organizational department knows how many years you have served at this level. And if you have served number of years, and your performance show that you merit a promotion or you merit a relocation to a different job, this will normally happen. So the party's secret is in terms of meritocracy, is this organizational department, and they have various formulas and criteria in terms of measuring your performance, in terms of assessing your abilities, and so on, and also assessing whether the fit between you and a certain opening job. And Chinese communism and Russian communism, this is very big question. I would say we have to compare two stages. One is the Chinese Revolution comparing to the Russian Revolution. The other is when the Communist Party is in power comparing to the Russian Communist Party. I think they have very similar components, that in terms of party organization. For example, this idea of democratic centralism that was from Lenin, and then the Chinese Communist Party adopted that and take it very seriously. But in terms of party ideologies, this Chinese Communist Party has been very different from the revolutionary time to the current period. The most important thing, I think, is this Chinese Communist Party has developed or reformulates its ideology continuously according to what they see as the Chinese reality, as the Chinese context. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the second round of questions. First is, why China has high Gini index ranking that measures the degree of inequality in distribution of family income in the country, which is even higher than the USA. When China's political system object to these kind of things. According to Gini index, many liberal democracies seems to achieve much better results than China, even though according to your definition, they do not focus on socioeconomic development. That is one. Second, how is it possible to combine socialism and Confucianism together and create a political system? There are many questions related to that. Many have asked similar kind of question, that how socialism and Confucianism can be combined. Third is like the unfolding of the crisis has pushed China's diplomacy in a quorum of uncertainty. How China still stands firm to its principal objectives. In your perspective, what peculiar feature of the Chinese political systems make it unsusceptible to external changes?
Can you repeat the third question?
Third question says that the unfolding of the crisis has pushed China's diplomacy in a quagmire of uncertainty. However, China still stands firm on its principal objective. In your perspective, what peculiar feature of the Chinese political system make it unsusceptible to external changes?
Okay. So the question is Gini coefficients. First, I think we should not contradict the inequality, certain inequality vis-a-vis overall socio-economic development. So I think the question was some Western countries have lower Gini coefficiency, so that proof they emphasize socio-economic development. I think in terms of socio-economic development, I think the Chinese government, the Chinese political beliefs certainly place much more focus in developing in socioeconomic development and use that to improve people's living standard. But that comparing Western countries, Western, like I said, liberal democracy ideology, socioeconomic development is not the responsibility of the government. The general belief is economy is the job of the market. Is the market that will take care of the economy. Where China believes economic development, the government has a very important responsibility. So I think this is one point. The second point is Gini coefficient. I have not looked at the figure recently. My impression was the Gini coefficient in China in the 1980s, 1970s was very low. So that means China at that time was very equal, but China at that time was also very poor. So at that time, you can say Chinese people are equally poor. People are suffering from poverty, from low income, but everybody is suffering more or less. So that was in the before 1980s, even before 1990s. What China looked like in terms of low Gini coefficient. Now today, China, and then the Gini coefficient, I think it expand in the 1990s and early 2000s because the rapid economic development. And then you have coastal cities developing faster, you have cities developing faster in the countryside. So the overall, the country, the whole country, you see a larger inequality. That was bad in terms of equality, but the positive side was everybody was actually getting better. Some people were getting better off, much better than some others, but everybody was moving forward, moving up. So the increase of inequality is in this context. And then I think after 2005, the Gini coefficient actually has either stabilized or decreased. I have not looked at the data, but I think what I said gave you the general, the more broader context. And the government does understand, especially the problem of poverty. So the recent last 5 or 6 years, the government has spent huge amount of effort dealing with the extreme poverty in this country, which is a very small proportion, maybe 1%, 2% of population. Some of my students are in this lecture, in this talk. They know I talk a lot about this poverty reduction efforts in China. And actually, I published one article in Rising Nepal, I think in December, about poverty reduction in China. And second question is Confucianism and socialism. We have to say this country has a very long political tradition. The Confucian-led, Confucian and legalist, we don't have time today, but from the year of 500, 400 BC, this kind of political ideology start to form. And by the Qin and Han period, basically 200 BC, the Chinese political system take a very full form. And a lot of these political beliefs were formed in those years. And then it continued throughout the 20th centuries. So the current government certainly doesn't completely deny these traditional resources. So to be very simple to answer your question is, the government, the party has its socialist and communist ideology, but it also combines the traditional Chinese political ideas and beliefs. The third question I still didn't quite get. I think the question was, now this crisis generate a lot of uncertainties. maybe, so how will China's democracy move forward or something like that, I think. My response is the current political system still works, and the party has the full control of the political agenda, meaning the party still enjoy or still has the social support, and the party is willing to change. The party is able to change when in the areas when it is necessary. So in terms of democratization into a multi-party system, I think the party and many people do not see that as necessary or useful. And second, it is also not feasible because the party will not accept that prospect. Yeah, thanks.
Welcome. Now let's go to other round of questions. Again, there is some clarification asked. Like the audience has said that Confucianism value is a hierarchical than the egalitarian left. So how can China build a revolutionary party that looks at the interest of working class? Because Confucianism believes in hierarchy, while left, or you can say communism, believes in equality. That is first question. Second, why do you think that despite of being painted as extremely cruel, has the Chinese government been able to take leaps and bounds in terms of GDP per capita and other social indicators? Third is, how is human rights suppressed in China? Is it just a Western media claim or media propaganda, or is it real? What do you think on this?
Okay, Confucianism and hierarchy. There are some very outdated element in Confucianism, and I think, and most of this relate to hierarchy and some kind of suppression, such as, I think Confucian believe men are, more women are of lower status. I think that's Confucianism. So these kind of elements, of course, people reject them, but the Confucian idea of, let's say, between the general public and people who serve leadership, serve in the government, they believe, Confucians believe in meritocracy, meaning good and capable people can only serve in important positions, in higher social positions. They will be given more privilege. They will be given, prestige, but they will also be given more responsibilities. And that's I think this is the very important Confucian ideas about politics. Is the people who want to serve in the government, who want to be leaders, you have to show quality, you have to show moral and intellectual abilities. So that way, Confucianism will be against a very simplistic way of one person, one vote. To be very, I can be very, very rude, that Confucianism will worry that popular vote may elect someone who are popular, but who are incapable, who are morally not qualified. So because Confucians also believe the public, the mass can be ignorant, can be naive, can vote someone not qualified, some bad people into office. Okay, I guess that's the idea. I think there were some elements of hierarchy in Confucianism that I think should be interpreted to help us understand politics. The second question is, I would say in general the Western media, English language media, portray of the Communist Party is strongly biased. So it is more prone to paint to picturing a very brutal party, very corrupt party, and to portray Chinese government as abusing human rights and so on. What I have done today is to show, maybe if not more accurate, but maybe at least a different way to look at the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese political system. Some of the so-called human rights cases reported, they may be real, but they may be taken out of context. So I think violation of human rights are often, not just in China, everywhere. It's just how do we pull this in context? How do we make sense of those events?
Let's go to next round of questions. CPC has set the target for eliminating poverty by 100th anniversary of the party on 1st July 2021. I heard that due to pandemic and for other reasons, the target won't be met, and there are indicators of increasing income disparities. What is your opinion on this? And there is similar question on this, that for the first time during the People's Congress, Chinese leadership did not put GDP target. Why was it so? Another is,
okay.
Maybe one more question. How do you
okay.
look at Xi Jinping's plan, like Xi's plan of extending the term of president for unlimited terms? I mean, the CPC made unlimited terms for the president's tenure. It was initially 2 terms. So how do you look at it?
Okay, thank you. Actually, let me go backwards because the second question is easier. And when the National People's Congress met this year, I think in June, I actually joined a radio program talking about this, that the government didn't specify a GDP growth target this year. The reason is very simple, because of the uncertainties generated by the epidemic. By June, of course, it was already under control in China. There were no new cases emerging in China, but globally it became a pandemic. So you have a lot of uncertainties from the outside world. So in this situation, if you still maintain a GDP target, it will distort regional governments' efforts. That to meet such a target, that the regional government, provincial government, they may take policies that maybe generate figures, but actually maybe that will disrupt the epidemic fighting measures, because you still have to be very, very careful to limit the importing of the epidemic cases. So that was the second question was easy, but I at the radio program I also said, for probably more than 10 years now, there have been discussion that because China's GDP growth has been high for many decades, now it is time actually to place less emphasis on GDP figures, but for the government to actually work on more balanced development, to worry less about growth figure, but really to worry about quality of the economy, to improve the quality of the economy. So this also relates to the first question about income disparity. So the point was, for the last 10 years or so, there have been voices that, we shouldn't, every year, we shouldn't put a GDP target. Actually, at least not put a bounding figure as the target. So in that context, this year, because of the epidemic, then the government actually removed the GDP figure target. So these two might be in operation together. Then the first question about poverty. By last year, the party was on course to achieve the complete eradication of poverty by 2021. And then this year, of course, so you have this epidemic. So some things will be disrupted and some works will taken a pause. But in general, I don't think that's a problem because by 2020, by last year, the poverty figure was indeed quite low already. I think from 2012, the people living under poverty line was 70 million. And then through this targeted poverty reduction program, that figure was decreasing by 10 million each year. So every year, the 70 million was reduced by 10 million. So by around 2019, the figure was very small already. Okay, then the last question about the term limits of the leader of the president. This was in the news for quite a while. The introduction of mine include that my research include leadership politics, elite politics in China. So I studied this issue quite a lot. My point is that the term limits, the term arrangement for the top leader to serve 10 years was gradually formed from late 1980s to early 2000. By 2002, this rule was fully established. And 2012, so 10 years after 2002, there was a leadership transition. So Xi Jinping, the current leadership, came into office. And then why in 2017, 2018, this kind of still was informal. There wasn't any party documents explicitly describe this 10-year tenure for the party leader. There was a constitutional rule for the president, for the state president, but these are different. Okay, the party leader has never had, the party's general secretary has never had a formal term limit. It was only the state president in the constitution there was a 10-year two-term limit. So why did the current leadership in 2018 change the constitutional requirement for two-term limits? My argument is actually the 10-year term limit was designed in the 1980s. Deng Xiaoping designed that. He was very worried that if a leader is allowed to serve too long, there will be a lot of negative in fact. So he, through 30 years, he made this kind of formal, but I think now things have changed. We have in the world, we have many countries that the top leader, let's say the German chancellor, she can serve as many terms as possible if she continues to win. And the British Prime Minister is the same. If your party can continue to win, you can continue to serve. And to limit a president, a top leader in China to retire at about 70, age of 70, now probably is too early. If a leader has proved his ability to provide leadership, probably you want to have more flexibility. You know, you see in the United States, the president is in his 70s, and Joe Biden in his 70s. So the age limit of so you have to retire around 70, probably also become less important. So I think the party now agrees that for the leader to serve more than 10 years, it's okay, it's acceptable. But I don't think the change of that clause means that any leader in China can have permanent can be in power forever for permanent position. The party only agrees that the party can have flexibility of more than 2 terms, more than 10 years, but definitely not infinite position. So I wouldn't expect any leader in China to serve to have non-retirement. He or she will retire after a certain number of terms. And I think the most important binding rule is every 5 years, you will have a party congress. Every 5 years, you will need the party to confirm that you still qualify to be the leader. So that more or less that is allow anyone to be in power forever.
Thank you very much. There are lots of questions flooding up. So let's go to one different from the context, which is more of a geopolitics. How, had China come to believe that capitalism is must for continuing development and becoming the world power? So capitalism, and there are also accusation of China being revisionist and all. Second is, how do we approach the role of Bhutan and Nepal concerning the rivalry between India and China? Third is, what will the impact of COVID-19 on Chinese economy and society?
Sorry, the second question is about Bhutan.
The second question is that how do you look at the role of Nepal, small countries like Nepal and Bhutan, especially when there is rivalry between China and India?
Okay, and the third question is about movie?
No, third question is about COVID-19, its impact on coronavirus, impact on Chinese economy.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. I think people are mixing capitalism with market economy. China embraced market economy, but not capitalism. China, so I just put this very simple way. Then if you have more, we can discuss. China believes in the market as an institution to generate economic growth, to generate economic activities. But the Chinese market economy is called officially called the socialist market economy, meaning the government has a very visible role in the economy, in regulation, in actually playing certain direct economic roles, such as some state firms. State firms are important players in the market economy. And we have other examples. In Singapore, for example, the government-owned companies, they are very active players in the economy. So market economy is China believes this is a modern, useful institution, the correct institution for economic development. But this is not capitalism. Capitalism is what you believe that private capital should be the sole players of the economy. And then Nepal and Bhutan, let me be very, very straightforward. I think China and Bhutan should establish diplomatic relations. That's been overdue. Second, I think China and India, or at least India, should recognize Bhutan and Nepal's should recognize Nepal and Bhutan's national sovereignty much better. Yes, India should support Bhutan and Nepal to be more independent players in international relations. That also means India should not obstruct China and Nepal becoming closer, because that means Nepal and Bhutan should be their own independent players in the international arena. So I will be, yeah, that's my very I think very clear position. But I don't study international relations, so that will be my quick comment. COVID-19, the first half of this year, the Chinese economy, of course, been affected by COVID-19 quite seriously. We have a negative growth of the first quarter, but from second quarter, the growth has turned positive. I think through the year, the whole year, Chinese economy is forecast to grow about 2 to 3%. From our point of view, most of the economic activities have resumed because more or less there were no epidemic cases around us, and in many provinces, I think being a big country, in many provinces it's completely safe. The COVID-19 is has completely disappeared. So more or less the economic activity have resumed. But because of the international environment, so exports have suffered, and then domestically you still have many service sectors, such as I think, for example, entertainment industry, because movie theaters are still not open. Sports events are not open. So because of this, the economy still is not fully running. So that's why in a normal year, you would expect China to grow 5, 6, 7%, but this year probably 2 to 3% will be quite good. Yeah, thanks.
Let's go to second round of question. Next round of question. In recent years, most of the scholar narrative accentuates China as an assertive power, questioning its ambition of peaceful resignation. Do you think the development of such narrative would contribute to destabilize the political system in China? Second, are you saying that only the CPC can represent Confucius value in governance? That was the question in reaction to the earlier comments. There's another question is, I did not get 100% of what liberal democracy, why liberal democracy do not require moral strength of their officials. Could you please elaborate further on this?
Okay. Actually, the first two questions, can you repeat them? I already get the third question.
The first question is that China is being assertive around in the region. So will that destabilize China? That is the first question. Second is that, do you mean that CPC can represent Confucius value in governance? Only CPC can do that. Only Communist Party can do that, or other party can also do that.
Sorry, only Communist Party can
represent Confucius value in governance. Do you mean that?
Okay. The first question, so-called assertiveness. If you are referring to the recent confrontation between China and India, I wouldn't see China being the assertive part. Between China and India in the border regions, it was always the India that were taking initiatives, and then China was responding. But more broadly, many so-called assertion of China being been assertive, say, for example, in the South China Sea. You know, I don't agree, but this is a very popular way of seeing China. I think we have to go back to Chinese understanding of our legitimate interests. For example, South China Sea, it was clearly from 1940s. It was clearly Chinese territory. Those islands, but during 1960s, 1970s, because China actually didn't have the ability to enforce, to administrate those islands, then countries nearby, they took occupation, they claim ownership, sovereignty of those islands. So from Chinese point of view, China is only trying to actualize, trying to materialize our Chinese sovereignty over those territories or islands. China is not being aggressive to take over other countries' territory. So China faces a very big problem of the international portrayal of China and the actual intention or rationale of Chinese behaviors. This requires a lot of communication, a lot of a lot of important information or materials from Chinese perspective to be made understood or available to the international, to the other countries. And then does China, does Communist Party represent Confucianism? No, I don't think only the Communist Party can represent Confucianism. I think any party, if they are, any party can adopt, can absorb certain elements from Confucian tradition of Confucian beliefs. It just happened that the Communist Party of China is able to and is willing to utilize or to inherit some part of the Confucian ideas and beliefs. And third question, does liberal democracy overlook moral strengths of leaders? I mean, in terms of elections, in terms of popular election, of course, the moral character of the candidates will matter. But so in elections or in democracy, the moral strengths, moral character of the politicians will matter. But what I was saying is, in the idea of liberal democracy, there's nothing about leaders. Liberal democracy is all about people having the right and power to choose government. Government should be responsible, accountable, responsive to the voters. There was nothing to say people should elect a person of moral strength, or people should elect a person of integrity, or people should elect a person of intelligence. So liberal democracy do not talk about this. It is actually in actual practice, of course, in democracy or in other situations, when people choose a leader, they will consider various aspects of the person. So yeah, so if you go to Rousseau or Locke and it's or John Rawls, you go to their writings, they do not talk about leaders. They only talk about people's rights. Thanks.
We have come towards the end of the program. So the last set of questions. Are women represented fairly in CPC? Can you please provide more information about gender equality within the party? Second is, The party leaders of Shanghai and the party leader of Tibet, Xinjiang, and other parts do not have similar life, similar facilities. How is CPC how is CPC working to tackle the differences? There are many media reports of violation of human rights of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. Their mosques and schools are destroyed. How do you look at it?
Okay. Okay. If you look at the actual numbers, women are taking up certainly less than 0.5%, less than 50% in the party, or and even less percentage in the central committee. So if you look at the figure, the females are underrepresented. They are very, by the way, I published one paper looking at women leadership in the villages. There are very deep structural reasons for gender underrepresentation of women in leadership positions in China and in many other countries. What we can say is this party, at least normatively, is supportive of gender equality and supportive of bigger roles for females. So you can say, comparing to, let's say, comparing to other countries of a similar socio-economic development level, Chinese women are more represented in the parliament, for example, but not, so the women's representation in politics are less equitable than many other countries. So China is not the low achiever, is not the high achiever, probably better than average Chinese. And I think we have to do more. The awareness of gender equality in China, I think, is still problematic. Better than some other countries, but I think still there are still a lot to be done. And then the second question was about Tibet. Can you repeat the second question about Tibet, Xinjiang?
The second question was that that the party members, actually it's talking about that the life in Tibet, life in Xinjiang, and life in Shanghai and Beijing is different. So how is party working to meet that differences? Because the party leader in Xinjiang do not enjoy the same facility that the party leader of Beijing and Shanghai enjoys. So how is the party fighting to remove that differences?
The party leader in Xinjiang, sorry, do not enjoy what?
Life, similar life. For example, yeah.
Okay. Of course, regional disparity is big in any large country. I am from Sichuan province, from a very poor place in Sichuan. I grew up in Guangxi province, Guangxi autonomous region, a very poor part of Guangxi, inside Guangxi. So I know quite well the regional disparities. What is encouraging, of course, you don't want everywhere of the same country become exactly the same. You want to have diversities. You want to have regional differences. So now I think many parts of the country have developed, and in terms of living standard, have all improved, and improved in their retain their different characters. So you go to different parts of the country, you enjoy that part of the country because the part is different from where you normally live. So so that's one aspect. The other is, I think what's encouraging is because of modern technology, infrastructure, now Western inner part of China, Western China, including Tibet and Xinjiang. I call it Xizang, including Xizang and Xinjiang, have developed quite rapidly. So people's living standard and the connectivity between these parts to the eastern provinces, to the major cities, to the international area are now much improved. So I think that's the encouraging part. And now with internet, with the internet and I think very soon 5G mobile network will make connection or connectivity even much better. And then that will reduce the sense of disparity. It will increase the sense of connectedness. And then the Xinjiang, the Uyghur issue, I can be very straightforward. The stories that schools were closing down or people were putting in camps, they are misinformation. I'm very clear about this. There were government effort to de-extremize the local religious groups and to try to bring young people into modern schools and vocational schools so they can acquire knowledge and skills to be employed, to join the modern jobs such as manufacturing, construction jobs, service jobs, because Uyghurs and other people of other ethnicity, traditionally they do not quite go to schools. And of course, you can argue that the schools, because of instruction language, you use Han Chinese, it will be more difficult for them. But there were effort to make that bilingual schools are furnished with enough teachers and so on. But I think to be very simple, a lot of reports about Uyghurs being put to camps, they're just false.
Thank you very much, Professor Wang. Thank you very much for your enlightening presentation. We learned a lot about China's political system because we do not get to hear these in this part of South Asia. We have very less knowledge about the party, at least, and the domestic affairs. So we are really in depth. Thank you very much for your valuable time. We hope to see you in real very soon. I'd also like to thank all our participants for their presence and wonderful question. Today we have another interesting webinar at 6:30 Kathmandu time on COVID-19, Black Lives Matter, and undoing of human rights in counterterrorism. Please join us. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you.